Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today, I'm bringing you episode 3 in my series, Books I Loved to Teach. This week, I put out a community poll asking viewers to tell me what book they would like to hear me talk about next. The choices in this poll were The Kite Runner, A Prayer for Owen Meany, The Color Purple, and Frankenstein. Frankenstein was the number one choice, gaining 48% of the vote. Owen Meany and Color Purple tied for second place with 20% each, and The Kite Runner came in last. So for this episode, I will be discussing Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein. This is actually a great choice for October and for spooky season. I'll just show you a couple of the different editions of Frankenstein that I have. I've shown this one before. This is a Signet Classics Omnibus. It has Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and an introduction by Stephen King. So that's one book, one edition that I have. I also have the SF Masterworks edition because this is often considered one of the earliest examples of a science fiction novel. And then I have this beautiful painted cover edition. Gold pages. Illustration on the back as well. It has illustrations throughout the book. And then the little Bantam Classic, which was the edition that we actually used in the classroom. Okay. I taught Shelley's Frankenstein in a senior English course that I taught, Advanced Placement English Literature. This is a course in great works of literature, and students who were successful in this class and on a national exam that they would take at the end of the year could gain college credit for having taken this class in high school. Our study of the novel, because this was an AP class, by necessity, had to focus on the types of skills that students would be required to demonstrate on the exam taken in the spring. There are 3 different types of essays on an advanced placement English literature exam. One essay that they have to write is on a poem. Students are given a poem to analyze, and they have to write an essay, reading the poem cold. They have to write an essay about it. So that essay we obviously could not apply to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But the other 2 types of essays would be essays that we would practice after having read this book. One of those essays would require students to closely analyze a passage, a lengthy passage from the novel, and then they would be asked to write about the literary devices and techniques that were being used in the text in order to get some major idea across. We did essays like that. We would also do an open-ended essay. The third essay on the AP exam is always a thematic question, and then students are asked to answer that thematic question by writing about any work of literary merit. So I would give them that kind of question and have them write about Frankenstein. So they had lots of practice writing the kinds of essays they would be required to do on the exam. And they're the kinds of essays that they're required to do in college as well. While I like to teach a work of literature on its own merits, in the case of Shelley's Frankenstein, some background and biographical information really is essential in setting the stage for the major thematic concerns in the novel. I'm going to just talk a little bit about Mary Shelley and her and her life. She was the daughter of the philosopher William Godwin and the philosopher and women's rights advocate Mary Wollstonecraft. Wollstonecraft would die 11 days after giving birth to her daughter Mary. This is a factor in Mary Shelley's life that I believe figures prominently in her writing, especially in Frankenstein, where she deals with the issues surrounding motherlessness. I'll discuss that in a bit. Mary was raised by her philosopher father and, from the time that she was 4 years old, by a stepmother, Mary Jane Clairmont. Their household included a whole bunch of children. There was a daughter that Wollstonecraft had by another man before Godwin. There were 2 children of William Godwin's from an earlier relationship that he had before Mary Wollstonecraft. And I think Clairmont brought 2 children to the marriage as well. So there's a whole collection of kids living in this household. When Mary was only 16 years old, she first met Percy Shelley and his wife, Harriet, who were frequent visitors and followers of William Godwin. Shelley fell in love with Mary, young Mary, and eloped with her, in spite of the fact that he was already married to Harriet. Percy, it seems, believed in a kind of practice of free love, and he even proposed to both Mary and Harriet that all 3 of them live together. Harriet, as you can imagine, was not too keen on this idea. Now, the next details of their lives are really important because I think they figure into her creation of the novel Frankenstein. Mary started having children by Shelley while he was still married to Harriet, and most of these pregnancies ended in tragedy. In 1815, Mary's first child, an infant daughter, was born 2 months prematurely and died within a few days of her birth. In 1816, she gave birth to their son, William. That same year, she began writing Frankenstein. While working on the early parts of the novel, her half-sister, Fanny Imlay, her mother's daughter by a partner before Godwin, committed suicide. Later that same year, Percy's wife, pregnant with his child, also committed suicide by drowning. Pregnant again herself, Mary lost the next baby. A baby girl, Clara, born in 1817, died within a year of her birth, and their son William died in 1819 at the age of 3, possibly of cholera or typhoid fever. Another son, Percy, would be born that same year, 1819, and he would be the only child to survive. His birth was followed by another pregnancy and another miscarriage. Mary and Percy did marry after Harriet's suicide, mostly because Shelley's lawyers advised marriage so that he might have a chance of gaining custody of his older 2 children by Harriet. He did not gain custody, and they were sent to live with an uncle. Shelley himself would drown in a storm along with 2 companions, off the coast of Italy when Mary was only 25 years old. She went on to live for almost another 30 years, dying at the age of 54. She never married again. She did have some suitors, one of them being Washington Irving. The reason I emphasize the life of Mary Shelley to such a degree is that I really think that her own loss of her mother, basically at birth, her growing up a motherless child, and her own difficulties with motherhood, with giving birth, and with keeping children once they were born, with them staying alive, I think her tragedies surrounding all of these events profoundly informed the writing of this novel. The origins of Frankenstein, the novel, are well known. The story originated in the summer of 1816 when Mary was 18 years old. She and Shelley and her stepsister, Claire Claremont, were spending the summer with Lord Byron and his physician, John Polidori, near Geneva, Switzerland. Shelley was still married to Harriet at this point. Claire was Byron's lover. Byron proposed a ghost writing contest, a ghost story writing contest. He started out writing a story about a vampire. Polidori wrote a story about a woman who had a body made of flesh, but her head was just a skull. He abandoned the story after the others apparently poked fun at it. Shelley was writing a story about his own childhood, and he abandoned that as well. Mary wrote the beginnings of Frankenstein during this contest, supposedly after a dream. And she had dreams about her deceased children and reanimating her children. Shelley would encourage her to continue writing, and he seriously edited the manuscript. She did not finish it until the following May of 1817. Shelley then set about trying to get it published. He wrote a short preface for the story, but the text itself was sent out anonymously. It was, however, dedicated to William Godwin, her father. The first two publishers rejected it, but the third accepted it for publication. It was originally believed by most early readers when it appeared in 1818 that Percy Shelley and not Mary was the author. There were at least 4 early editions of this novel. The original in 1818, issued anonymously, a reprinted edition in 1821, published in Paris, that had Mary Shelley's name on it, a reprinted edition in 1823 in 2 volumes, and later a revised edition in 1831 with a new preface by Mary herself. The novel lends itself to the teaching of a lot of important literary devices and techniques. First, it is a novel with a frame narrative, and it is also written in letters, in the epistolary form. And these are important concepts for serious students of AP literature to learn. The novel is told entirely in the form of letters. On the outside of the frame, we have a ship's captain, Robert Walton, writing letters home to his sister, Mrs. Margaret Saville, conveying the news of his voyage to find the Northwest Passage. Along the way, he and his crew pick up a crazed Victor Frankenstein, who then begins to tell his story of his wild and unbelievable experiences. Walton acts as something of a scribe for Victor Frankenstein. And he sends all of this on to his sister. So Walton's letters to the sister make up the beginning and the end of this frame narrative structure. Within the frame, we get Victor Frankenstein's story, and in the middle of that, we get the narrative of the creature, who has no name throughout the novel. We also study the subtitle of the novel, which is The Modern Prometheus, which leads to a discussion of Greek mythology and also of Ovid's version of Prometheus in the Metamorphoses. Students analyze how this literary allusion informs the work as a whole. We talk about all of the ways that Victor Frankenstein's life parallels the different versions of the life of Prometheus, a god both credited with creating humans out of clay and also with defying Zeus and the other gods by giving humans fire, giving them knowledge, and therefore the ability to be God-like. We analyze, too, how Prometheus's eternal punishment, he's tied to a rock where his entrails are repeatedly devoured by a vulture, and then the entrails regenerate, and then they are devoured again, endlessly. We talk about how this punishment also parallels the eternal psychological torture that Victor Frankenstein experiences in the course of the novel. We analyze several different themes that are very important to an understanding of the novel, including the dangers of excessive human ambition and pride, the corruption of innocence, monstrousness, primarily in humans, and the devastating effects of motherlessness. I find the latter to be the most interesting. Everyone pretty much knows that the true monster in the story is not the creature created from dead body parts that are then reanimated. Rather, the real monster is, of course, Victor Frankenstein, who creates life and then callously abandons it. This, I think, is the issue that Mary Shelley was really trying to come to terms with in the novel. What strikes me over and over again is the absence of mothers in the novel and in Mary Shelley's own life. It's a theme she comes back to over and over again with all of her characters. It is hard not to think that Mary Shelley's own motherlessness and her excruciating loss of multiple pregnancies and all of her living children but one, all of her children except for one dying. It's hard not to think that all of those things informed her writing here. Take a look at a few examples in the novel. Victor's mother is an orphan. She is nursing Victor's cousin, Elizabeth, who later becomes his wife, when she herself gets scarlet fever and dies. Another character, Justine, in the novel, is falsely convicted of the murder of Victor's little brother, who was really killed by the creature. Justine also grows up without a mother. The creature, created by man alone, when Victor sidesteps conception, pregnancy, and birth, the creature also has no mother, and therefore no name. For Victor, the creator of human life, or the animation of dead human parts, is really nothing more than the demonstration of his own greatness, his own prowess as a scientist. He experiences nothing but horror and utter detachment from his creation. From the moment he lays eyes on the creature, he is completely repulsed by it and seeks to disassociate himself from it. He completely abandons the creature. And yet, this creature, though hideous looking, is not yet a monster. His monstrousness only comes about when he is repeatedly deprived of love and nurturing, of mothering. He has a father creator who abandons him immediately, and he has no mother at all. The creature attempts to teach himself to be human, and he does this after being abandoned by his creator. He studies from afar. He studies other humans, and he learns their language. He learns to speak and to read. In fact, he quickly and amazingly becomes quite literate, reading the likes of Plutarch and Milton and Goethe. He is, in fact, passionately eloquent when he finds Victor and tries to make a case for himself with Victor, asking for the creation of a partner so that he is not utterly alone in the world. He only begins to do monstrous things when Victor Frankenstein, after abandoning him once, now refuses to accommodate his request. The creature does murderous, monstrous things, but only after being treated monstrously, only after the callous, indifferent rejection by the arrogant creator who does not take responsibility for his own creation. Mary Shelley's novel is an incredible work of fiction, thought by many to be the first real work of science fiction, a recreation of ancient myths and a commentary on the devastating effects of the absence of mothers. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.